A very good evening to all meditators and all devotees. This evening, I shall give a brief instructions on the practice of mindfulness meditation or Vipassana meditations. The foundations of meditation is a purifications of moral conducts. That's why you have to observe the 9 precepts during the intensive retreats. You also have to observe the rules and regulations of the retreats, so that you have conditions, foundations to enable you to practice well. So purifications of the moral conducts is the basic requirements or to make progress in meditations, either concentration meditation or mindfulness meditation. When you could observe your moral conducts well, then your verbal conduct is purified, your physical conduct is purified. Then you have clear conscience. You do not have the feeling of remorse because of purity of conducts. So when based on this purity of conducts, then one begins to meditate, or in other words, one begins to cultivate the mind. Meditations in Pali is known as bhavana. The true essence of bhavana is to remove unwholesome mental states or evil thoughts, and at the same time to cultivate wholesome mental states or wholesome thoughts, such as mindfulness, concentration, confidence, and so on, in order to produce a calm mind or peaceful mind. But this is not yet the aim of bhavana. Calmness, peacefulness is not yet the aim of bhavana. So based on calmness, peacefulness mind, one has to make a further effort to develop wisdoms or insight knowledge. So one has to develop mindfulness in order to cultivate or develop wisdoms. Wisdoms in Pali is known as panya, or is known as panya because it's conducive to the realizations of the true natures of existence, or the characteristics of mental and physical phenomena as they really are, and eventually realize the 4 noble truths and attain enlightenments. So this is the aim of bhavana. So you have to rightly understand the aim of bhavana. So here we practice mindfulness meditation, or in other words, Vipassana meditation, insight meditations. The name of this practice in Pali is known as Satipatthana Vipassana Bhavana. Satipatthana refers to the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness. Vipassana means realizations or right understanding of the true natures of mental and physical phenomena through personal experience or direct experience. Bhavana means developments or cultivations. So we only through the practice of four foundation mindfulness, that practice leads us to develop wisdoms or insight knowledge or right understanding of true nature of mental and physical phenomena through direct experience or personal experience. So the word sati is translated mindfulness or awareness. It means the attention of the mind at the present moment. So sati means the present moment's attention. Here it doesn't refer so much to memory or remembering. So sati here means the present moment's attention. As long as we are awake, we have attentions. You can hear my voice. You can hear the noise of the aircon. This is because of the attention of the mind. But when one is sleeping, the attention is not there. One is at the state of bhavanga. In Pali, it's known as bhavanga. In those one does not have any awareness or attention when one falls into sleep. But as long as one is awake, there's attention of mind. So one could hear sound, noise. One see various visible objects, and so on. So this attention is something wholesome or skillful. It's a wholesome attention that could lead us to realize the true natures of mental and physical phenomena as they really are. Only when we could realize the true natures of mental and physical phenomena as they really are, then we could overcome the mental defilements gradually. So we have to develop our mind in those through this practice of mindfulness. So during the practice of mindfulness, meditators have to be mindful of varieties of objects or phenomena. Mindfulness meditators could not choose one object or one phenomenon and be mindful of that object or that phenomenon all the time. It's because every phenomenon or objects, either a mental object or physical object, is arising and passing away very instantly. Then there be another object arising. That object also will subject to instant passing away. But meditators could not see clearly the rapid process of arising and passing away unless they have attained deeper and deeper concentration. In order to attain deeper and deeper concentration, meditators have to develop constant and continuous mindfulness. So constant and continuous mindfulness is one of the important factors to make progress. So during retreats, meditators have only one job or one responsibility to do. That's to be mindful. As a meditators, you are known as meditators or yogis because you are endowed with mindfulness. So we can say your life as a mindfulness meditator is mindfulness. So you have to put forth effort to develop mindfulness from one moment to next moment, from one object to next object, or from one process of movements to the next process movements, and so on. So during the retreats, meditators have to practice walking meditation, sitting meditation most of the time, but they do spend time on other activities. For example, eating your breakfast, lunch, or drinking, or washing, taking showers, and so on. Meditators can't afford to be unmindful. When meditators are unmindful, then there's a gap of mindfulness. In other words, there's a gap of mindfulness between the previous mindfulness and the next another moment of mindfulness. So if the gap between one mindfulness and the next mindfulness is very wide, then it's difficult to gain deeper concentration. So meditators have to put forth effort to develop mindfulness while doing their routine activities, such as eating breakfast, lunch, or drinking, walking from one place to another place. For example, as you walk back to your rooms, you should be mindful of walking, or left, right, and so on. So constant and continuous mindfulness is very important. Every sitting meditation should be preceded by walking meditations. It is a good habit of practice that meditators should practice walking meditation prior to sitting meditation. It's because during walking meditations, you may realize that there are various processor movements, such as left, right, lifting, pushing, dropping, and so on. So these processor movements can help you to arouse your mindfulness, in other words, your attention of mind. So you have to make sure your attention mind stay with the movements. Those movements to be realized during walking. So you may have noticed you have to walk within each walking path. So I shall do some demonstrations. So standing at one end of walking path, it's better you lock your hands, if possible. If you do not feel comfortable, then just let it be, or put at both sides. But if possible, you lock your hands. In other words, hold your hands softly, place it in front or at your back, So you hold your hands softly, or you place it at the back, or you hold the other arms. Why the teachers suggest to the meditators to lock their hands is because to minimize unnecessary movements. For example, as you know, some meditators, or when we walk in our daily life, as we walk, we swim our arms. So during walking meditation, if you walk and swim your arms at the same times, that movement, that swinging the arms, distracting your mindfulness on your walking. That means you may not be pay attention well to the movements of the foot. So that's why we suggest to meditators to lock their hands. So you lock your hands and be mindful that you are standing, aware that you are standing. At the beginning of the practice, the mindfulness is not yet developed. It could be quite superficial. In other words, the mindfulness is not attentive, not precise. So we introduce a technique known as taking note mentally, or just mental noting, or mental labeling. As you pay attention, be mindful that you're standing at that moment. Then you take note mentally, standing. But you should not mindful of that labeling. Although you are conscious of the labeling, but you learn to pay attention to the object, and take note mentally, standing. You do not have to visualize your standing postures. We do not visualize the object in mindfulness meditation. We learn to know the object through direct experience. Actually, anyone who turns the attention of the mind to the postures, that person will know the postures immediately. You do not have to visualize your postures. You do not have to use the way of scanning. Some way of mindfulness is by scanning the postures from top to the bottom. But in mindfulness meditation, we learn to know standing as standing, or during sitting as sitting. We do not have to visualize the postures. So be mindful and note standing about 5 or 6 times. Then you may begin to walk. You do not have to count how many times you have been noting the object. Or counting is also not the way to develop mindfulness. We do not count how many times we have been noting the object. So be mindful and note the standing postures roughly about 5 or 6 times or 7 times. Then you begin to walk right or left. The stepping is not too long, not too short. And you slow down in accordance with your ability. What's meant here, you do not have to force yourself to slow down. It's because most of us have been moving quite fast in our daily life. We have to walk quite fast, or sometimes eating our breakfast, lunch in our daily life quite fast. But when we come to join the retreats, you need to slow down so that your mindfulness or your attention mind can follow various process of movements well. But at the same time, you should not force yourself to slow down too much. Because if you want to slow down very much, then you have to put a lot of mental effort to slow down. When the mental effort to slow down is not so strong, you may not be able to mindful of the movements well. As you know, our mind cannot do two things at the same time. You want to slow down, your mind has to put some effort, intentional effort, to control movements. So we only suggest meditators to slow down gradually. So you learn to walk at the pace of slow movements, yet you are able to mindful of the movements well. Here, what we emphasize is to develop the mindfulness. But in order to develop the mindfulness well, meditators may need to slow down. So be mindful of the movements right. Be aware of the movements, then note it. Be aware of the movements and make a mental note right, slowly. Left, right. When meditators have reached the end of the walking path, then they stop. But they don't pay attention to stopping. Once they stop there, they quickly mindful of standing again, or standing, 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 standing. Then they have to turn back, turn slowly. At the beginning of retreats, if you can't turn it slowly, then you just try to slow down a little bit. As you turn, you may turn mindful of turning movements of body. That turning movement is also quite clear. And not turning, turning, standing, standing, standing. Be mindful, note the standing postures about 5 or 6 times. And during walking meditations, meditators have to restrain the eyes from looking here and there. You may look on the floor about 5 feet, but you should not focus your attention on the floor. You do not have to keep a perfect distance, just about between 5 to 6 feet. It's because if meditators did not restrain the eyes, if they like to look here and there, they may not be able to concentrate the mind well on the practice. So we suggest meditators have to restrain the eyes during the walking meditation. Even when you're walking outside, you also learn to restrain your eyes if possible. If you like to look here and there, you may not be mindful of your steps well. Also during the retreats, meditators have to learn to restrain the eyes or the sense door, for example, the ear doors, so that you could concentrate the mind well on the practice. So ideally, meditators practice walking for about 1 hour, or nearly 1 hour, or about 50 minutes, or 1 hour 5 minutes, 1 hour 10 minutes, and so on. So on the first day of retreats, meditators may choose to mindful of the walking for the first 15 minutes. Be mindful of left and right, slowly or right. Learn to walk naturally, and learn to practice meditation with the mind and body relaxed. With the mind and body relaxed, do not feel tense, do not feel anxiety. In other words, some meditators may feel anxiety or worried that the mind, they could not practice well, or they feel worried that the mind will be thinking, wondering, and so on. So learn to practice mindfulness meditation with the mind and body relaxed. But they need to put forth enough effort in the practice, enough effort that does not cause too much tension or pressures to your mind. So be mindful of left and right about 15 minutes. As you're mindful of your movements, sometimes the mind is wandering or thinking of something. As soon as you know the mind is thinking, then it's better you stop your walking. But you do not have to pay attention to stopping. For example, as I'm mindful of the movements of the right foot, right. Then I realize that my mind is thinking of something. I be mindful of that thinking. If that thinking did not disappear immediately, then I shall make mental note thinking. At the same time, be aware or pay attention to that thinking. Once thinking disappeared, I move again, left, right, and so on. Then meditators, mindful of left and right, and note it as it really occurs about 15 minutes. If the mind is thinking or wandering, meditators should stop walking and be mindful of that thinking mind as it really occurs. When the thinking has disappeared, meditators may resume the walking again. Then for the next 40 or 45 minutes, meditators have to walk slower and be mindful of 3 phases of steps, or in other words, 3 process of movements. They are lifting, pushing, dropping. You do not have to lift the foot too high. If possible, you keep the foot parallel to the floor. Then you place it down, dropping. So lifting or pushing slowly, or dropping, or lifting, pushing, dropping. So you also need to slow down. Yet your stepping is quite stable. Not much shaking or wobblings. Lifting or pushing, dropping. So you keep the foot parallel to the floor, so that you can put the foot down flatly, dropping, lifting, or pushing, dropping, and so on. So when you reach the end walking path, you stop. Be mindful of standing posture again. Standing, 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 standing. Mindful, and note the standing postures about 5 or 6 times. Then you turn back again, or turning. So here I emphasize meditators train the mind to realize the movements. Left, right movements. You do not focus your attention on the feet. You try to focus your mind on the movements. When you slow down and be mindful of lifting, pushing, dropping, there are 3 processes of movements. So you learn to perceive, be aware of the movements. You do not focus your attention on the feet. Movements to be realized. As you turn, there are movements. Standing, there's no movements, but we want to realize the nature support. The nature support is one of the specific characteristics of the wind element. Besides the characteristics of the support, wind element also has the specific characteristics of movements, motions, or vibrations. At the end of walking meditation, it's important to carry forward your mindfulness as well as concentration into your sitting. If you walk unmindfully to the place of sitting, sit down unmindfully, then you may have lost your mindfulness. Then you may have to start from zero. So constant and continuous mindfulness is very important. So at the end of walking meditation, you also try your best to walk slowly, mindfully to the place of sitting. If possible, maintain the same movements. Be mindful of lifting, pushing, dropping to the place of sitting. So at the end of walking meditation, it's important to walk slowly to the place of sitting. If you wish to pay homage to Buddha, you should also do it slowly, mindfully. In fact, one who practices mindfulness meditation or satipatthana meditation, that can lead one to realize the supramundane Dharma. Supramundane Dharma here means the path and fruition knowledge, as well as Nibbana or enlightenment. So, this practice, actually by this practice, one is giving the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha the highest homage. So through the practice, we give our respect, our homage to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So similarly, you have to walk slowly to the place of sitting, lifting, or pushing, or dropping, lifting. So the stepping is not too long, not too short. If the stepping is very short, then it seems like not natural. Sometimes some meditators walk with the short steps. Very short steps is not natural. So the stepping is not too long, not too short. If the stepping is too long, then you could not place the foot down flatly. Most likely, the heel will touch the floor. So that's why we suggest meditators during the retreats walk with a step not too long, not too short. So walking slowly, mindfully to the place of sitting, lifting, or pushing, dropping, or lifting, or pushing, dropping. So when meditators reach the place of sitting, they should not sit down immediately. First, be mindful of the standing posture again. Standing, 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 standing. When meditators want to unlock the hands, they should also do it mindfully. For example, meditators unlock the hand one by one, or for example, moving slowly. As you unlock your hand, move slowly, moving, Then sit down slowly. As you sit down, you should pay attention to the movements of sitting down. You do not pay much attention to the tightening of muscle and so on. So there's a process of movements. These process of movements should be realized, also be perceived. When you realize there's a touching of the knee with the cushion, be mindful, note touching once or twice. If meditators wish to pay homage to the Buddha, they should do it slowly. Fold the palms slowly, if possible, one by one. So during the retreats, meditators have all the time to develop mindfulness. So they do not have to do something in a hurry or want to finish it fast. So when meditators want to pay homage to Buddha, we also fold the palms slowly, one by one. For the lifting. So they only lift up the other hand, lifting. When there's a touching, be aware touching, and so on. When meditators raise the folded palm to the forehead, they do it slowly. So lifting, or bowing. So as they bow down or bend down, bending or bowing slowly, as slow as possible. Or when there's a touching, be aware touching, and so on. So if meditators have the aspirations to make progress, if they take interest in the practice, then they would slow down gradually. So then they could help them to develop mindfulness, to strengthen the power of mindfulness, so that the mindfulness is getting or becoming more and more attentive, precise, and energetic. Then meditators may choose any postures that they feel comfortable. The most important is to keep the postures upright. Close the eyes. Then meditators may begin the practice. So these retreats, we practice pure insight meditation. It's not preceded by concentration meditations. Sometimes in certain retreats, meditators may begin the practice of concentration meditation. For example, loving kindness meditation for 1 or 2 days or 2 or 3 days before they begin the practice of mindfulness meditation. But in these retreats, we shall practice pure insight meditations. So right at the beginning of practice, meditators have to be mindful of their mind. Whatever mental state is arising at that present moment, or whatever physical object or body sensation that's arising at that present moment. But at the beginning of practice, the mindfulness is not attentive, not sharp. Meditators could sense that there are 2-3 objects or phenomena. They may not know how to begin, since there are so many objects. So we have to begin the sitting meditation with one object. You sit there. If you are sitting down and waiting for an object to arise, then very soon the mind will be wandering, thinking. Or if you are purposely searching for an object, then that's also not the way of mindfulness. In mindfulness meditation, we do not really have to search for an object or look for an object. But because the mindfulness is weak, so we have to begin from somewhere with an object. It's quite similar when you learn anything. Let's say you learn to dance or learn Tai Chi. You also have to begin with some steps, some basic steps. So similarly, in this meditation, we have to begin with some basic objects. So one of the basic objects is the movement of dormants. This movement of dormants is one of the 6 types of wind elements. Sometimes some people may look for this object in the scriptures, movement of dormants or abdominal movements. You may not be able to find this term or this name. But one who understands the teaching, these movements belong to one of the 6 types of wind elements, 6 kinds of wind elements. So this movement of abdomen is known as wind element in the belly. If you read the scriptures, then you may come across certain scriptures explains about 6 kinds of wind elements. One of the 6 is wind element in the belly. So because there's wind element in the belly, that's why we could perceive or feel the abdomen is moving. There are other wind elements such as upward movements, downward movements, wind elements that's moving along the limbs, your arms, and so on. When you have gain better and better concentration, you may experience other types of wind element. Then the wind element inside the intestines. And number 6 is the breath, the in breath and out breath. So as long as one is alive, one has breath, the abdomen also move. That means the abdomen is moving forward or is expanding. You feel the expansions of the abdomen. Then you may feel the abdomen is moving inwards or contracting and so on. So this object is known as basic object of sitting meditation. Some books on this, some books on the practice of Vipassana meditation name this object as a primary object. But the word primary does not mean the most important. The word primary does not mean the most important. It's an object to help you to begin the meditation. That's meaning of primary here. In Pali, this object is known as mula kammatthana. So the word mula is quite similar to the Malay word mula, just to help you to begin meditations. Especially the beginners do not know how to begin. So we have to give them instructions to begin the sitting meditation by directing the attention mind to the abdomen in order to perceive the movements. So meditators have to learn to keep the mind body relaxed. The breath is normal, natural. If the abdomen is not clear, if the movement of abdomen is not clear, meditators should not purposely take a deep breath or vigorous breath. They should not purposely do it. We have to learn to realize the process of movements as a natural process. We have to learn to realize other objects, pain, or numb, or thinking, and so on. All these are natural processes. Those meditators should not purposely create it, or should not purposely make an effort to make it clearer. Sometimes meditators feel the movement of abdomen is not clear, so they purposely take a deeper breath in order to make the movements clearer, or they use some force of abdomen, apply some force on the abdomen in order to make the movements clearer. But this is not the right way of developing mindfulness. So if meditators could not perceive of the movements of the abdomen clearly, or sometimes they feel that the abdomen is not moving, then they should not keep the mindfulness there, or they should not keep the attention or the mind there. They may pay attention or direct the awareness or mindfulness to the alternative. So instead of focusing the mind on the abdomen, since there's no movements, meditators can take the sitting postures as an object. So sitting posture is also one of the basic object of sitting meditation. So meditators pay attention to the sitting postures, realizing that the posture is upright, and note it as sitting. But we do not have to mindful of the sitting postures many times. It's because in the practice of mindfulness meditation, the mind is supposed to be active from one moment to next moment, from one object to next object. So meditators may mindful of the sitting postures and note it sitting. Then they may pay attention to the context of the body. The meditators may realize that there are many contacts of the body. This contact is known as the touching points. Usually, we mindful and note it as touching. If meditators place the hand of the knee, then they may realize there's contact on the left. The contact of your left hand with the knee, or the contact of the right hand with the knee. Some meditators may decide where to place the hand. Some meditators prefer to place the hand on top of each other's and place it on the laps. The most important meditators choose the postures and should not change within sessions of sitting. For example, sometimes meditators begin a sitting meditation by placing the hand above the knee. Then, about 15 minutes later or 20 minutes, they feel some kinds of discomfort. Then they move the hand, they place it in front. Then later on, they feel discomfort. They move and place it back on the knee again. So this is a distraction to the practice. Meditators should not move at all. If they feel discomfort, then be mindful and note discomfort, so that they can realize that feeling of discomfort as it really occurs. So there are many touching points. Let's say you sit the Burmese way by placing both legs evenly on the cushions. You may perceive the calf is touching the floor, the left one touching the floor, or touching the cushion, the right one. Or sometimes the touching of the heel with the calf, or even the touching of your lips, touching of your shirt with the skin, the touching of lower backs with the cushions. So meditators may choose two clear touching points. For example, I choose the touching of my hand with the knee. So I be mindful and note the right one, the touching of right hand with the knee, touching. Mindful means you pay attention. You put your attention on that touching, on the left, touching, sitting. Then you mindful of the touching of the right hand with the knee again, touching. The touching of left hand with the knee, touching, sitting, until there's an object arising, a strong object arising. For example, pain is getting stronger, then meditators mindful note pain, and so on. So when meditators are mindful of the physical object or body sensation, they should always be mindful of the strongest object that's arising in the body. If there's no strong object, meditators should pay attention to the basic object again. For example, the first one is the movement of abdomen. If the movement of abdomen is not clear, or they feel that there's no movements at all, then they should mindful of the sitting postures, alternate with 2 touching points, or 1 touching point, 2nd touching point, then be mindful of sitting, then be mindful of the first touching point again, touching, the second one, touching, until there's another stronger object arising in the body. Whenever meditators are mindful of any body object or sensation, then the mind is thinking of something. Meditators are mindful and note the thinking as it is, thinking. When thinking has disappeared, meditators pay attention to the basic object again. Or if there's a stronger object arising, the pain is much clearer than the basic object, then they should mindful of pain again. So in other words, meditators have to follow a guideline or principles during the practice. The guideline or the principles of mindfulness meditation is to be mindful of the most dominant object that's arising at that present moment, and be mindful and note it as it really occurs. If there's no object that's very dominant or very distinct during sitting meditation, then meditators pay attention to one of the basic objects. For example, the movement of abdomen. If they could not perceive any movements at all, then they should pay attention to sitting postures, sitting, 1 touching point, touching, another touching point, touching. As they are mindful of one of the basic objects, if there's a stronger object arising in the body, then they should pay attention to that stronger object. As meditators are mindful of one of the strongest objects in the body, if they realize the mind is thinking or planning, or sometimes there's desire arising, desire to move because of strong pain, then meditators should be mindful of that desire. Or desire. When desire has disappeared, meditators could keep the posture still, not moving. So in other words, during sitting meditation, it's important to keep the postures upright, yet it's quite relaxed. And whenever the meditators feel any kinds of discomfort, for the pain, numbness, they will learn to be patient with it, tolerate the pain. They try their best not to move or to change the sitting postures. But when the pain is getting stronger and stronger, the intensity of the pain is getting stronger and stronger. If the meditators feel the pain is unbearable, then they may stop the sitting early. In other words, when the pain is unbearable, it's better not to move or change your postures. Because when meditators move the postures or the sitting positions, whenever there's a pain, it can become a habit in the sitting meditation. But that habit is a hindrance to the progress of mindfulness, concentrations. So meditators have to train themselves to be patient with the pain or any kinds of physical discomfort. So some meditators may not able to sit for 1 hour on the first day or second day of retreats. They could strive their best to sit maybe about half an hour or slightly longer than half an hour. Then they feel the pain is unbearable. They may stop the sitting early and proceed to another session of walking meditation and so on. So on the first day of the retreats, or even the second day of retreats, if the meditators could not keep the practice in balance, to keep the practice in balance, it means meditators have to walk for 1 hour, sit for 1 hour. Then if there's a time, followed by another session of walking, 1 hour walking, 1 hour sitting. But for those who do not do practice constantly, continuously, or especially at home, if they could not sit for 1 hour, they may strive their best to sit for half an hour. Or sometimes they feel difficult to sit for half an hour. It's about 25 minutes. Then they feel the pain or physical discomfort is unbearable. They may stop the sitting, get up slowly, mindfully. Do not get up quickly, and most important, noiseless. Mindfulness meditation, sometimes also known as noiseless meditation. Wherever you sit down without much noise. At the end of sitting meditation, we will not get up without much noise. Open the door, closing the door without much noise, or the best without any noise. In your room, you also have to be careful so that you can give support to each other, make the place conducive for mental cultivations. When the place is when the place is noiseless, you may feel the place is calmness. Feel the calmness of the place. So when you want to get up slowly. Even in the most retreats I observe in overseas, they even do not allow meditators to drink inside the hall. You wish to drink, it's better drink in the pantry or outside the hall, so that you could concentrate well on the practice. So getting up also slowly. For example, you place your hand above knee, you do it slowly, lifting, or beyond moving, turning, place it down slowly. So you may not have to do it very slow on the first day or second day, but we do encourage meditators to slow down day by day. Only when you could slow down more and more, then you could mindful of the process and movements in more details. I give examples. Sometimes on the first day, you only be mindful of lifting, or maybe moving, turning, putting down, touching, and so on. But on the second or third day retreats, you need to slow down and note that process movements more than once or twice, lifting, or we are aware moving, turning, putting down or down, and so on. So only when you can mindful and note the process movements in more details, then you can get a better experience in mindfulness meditation. So getting up slowly, stand up slowly, then walk slowly to the place of walking path, and be mindful of left, right again for about 15 minutes. Then only be mindful of 3 processes of steps: lifting, pushing, dropping. So on the first day of the retreats, meditators may be mindful of left, right, lifting, pushing, droppings. Only when they can walk slower and slower, then they can increase the objects. Usually we may give the instructions to increase the objects during the interview. Then the other aspect of practice, mindful of daily routine activities. In other words, eating breakfast, lunch. Meditators also learn to be mindful of the movements. For example, sitting down there, be aware of scooping, lifting up the spoon, lifting. Be aware of opening the mouth, or putting the spoon, taking up. Be aware of putting down, or be aware of chewing the food, chewing. When you taste something strong, there's strong taste, be mindful of tasting, and so on. So only one who is mindful make oneself as a yogi or mindfulness meditators. So meditators take interest and practice, then they would be energetic in the practice. If one doesn't have the interest, then the effort also not strong. It's quite similar to your daily life when you are not meditating. You're interested in something, then what will happen? Then you have a lot of mental effort. You pay attention well to something that you have the interest of. So one who is a follower of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, when you go to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha for refuge, you are known as Upasaka, Upasika. You are drawing near the Buddha, the teachings. So you should take interest. You want to know the Buddha and the teachings and the practice, the Sangha, and so on. Mindfulness meditation is something you have to understand from your own practice. You cannot understand mindfulness meditation well by thinking or by asking questions again. You can only understand the meditation, mindfulness meditation, through the practice. You have to put away whatever ideas you have about the meditation, your personal ideas, your preconceptions about the meditation, and so on. You come to practice mindfulness meditation with your own ideas, with some preconceptions, you may not meditate well. It's because the practice of mindfulness meditation, the ultimate aim is to realize the truth. The truth here means the form of truth. We cannot realize the form of truth through our own thinking or analyzing our own ideas. So you have to follow the teachings, the way of mindfulness in order to realize the truth. So I wish all meditators put forth enough effort in the practice, or take interest, or have the aspirations to realize the experience of meditations, to realize the benefits of meditation through your own effort, so that eventually you could understand the Dharma better and better as you develop your wisdom through the practice of mindfulness meditation. And finally, you could also attain your spiritual goal, enlightenment.